Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok are all platforms we use on a day-to-day basis. Many people think that these are apps just to help connect people online, but what if I told you that these apps divide countries and break democracies over time? In the 90s, this might have been the average person's leanings, but after the emergence of social media, people on both sides moved to a more extreme position. Populations that use these apps become more polarized, leading to more polarizing politicians. Since politicians don't agree on anything because these apps has polarized everyone, one person makes some progress in an issue, then it gets reversed. The next person does something else, then it gets reversed again. This continues to the point where almost nothing new gets built in the United States. This is why the New York train station and education system looks the exact same way it did from 50 years ago. The question is, how do these social networks work in a way that breaks the country over time? And what are some things that we can do to push it in the right direction? Welcome to How the Internet Broke America. Now, I want to build up to how the internet broke America, but the only way for you to understand this is to first understand the importance of perspectives. Now, follow me. There's an ancient story of 6 blind men who were trying to identify a mystery object, so they all went around it to touch different parts to figure out what it was. One man said it feels sharp and pointy like a spear. The second man said it feels long and smooth, sort of like a snake. The third guy said it's big and touches the ground, it must be a tree stump. The fourth guy said it's strong and solid, it must be a wall. The fifth guy said it's large and feels like leather, it must be a giant leaf. The sixth guy said it's small and dangly, it must be an old piece of rope. Now, if you wanted to solve this, you would do something very similar to what a detective does. Say there was a crime that was committed, and there are a bunch of witnesses that all seen what happened. The detective gets the perspectives of everyone involved in order to understand who committed the crime so they don't throw the wrong person in jail. Very similar to our crime, with our 6 blind men, you would have to get the perspectives of everyone involved to realize the thing they were actually touching was an elephant. Since every blind man was touching a different part of the elephant, they all thought it was something different until you put their perspectives together. And if you only gotten one perspective, you would have been completely wrong on what the item actually was. Now, you can think of the founding fathers knew that there was a lot to be gained from this, so they set up many institutions and processes to get people to act sort of like detectives. Take, for instance, the court system. If you ever watched Judge Judy,
goodbye.
Where there's a case, she listens to both sides. Essentially, she acts like a detective to combine those perspectives before she makes her final ruling. We all remember the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial. Every jury member acts like a detective by listening to Johnny's side, Amber's side, the witness's side, and even bring in experts like psychologists to better understand the psychology of all the people who are involved. The jury takes all these perspectives into account before making their final decision. The second process the founding fathers had was something known as the town hall, which Elon wants to make Twitter into a modern version of. More on that in a second. A hot topic during the early days of the United States was, how much power should the federal government have? Should we have a powerful federal government, but the state's power is very limited? Or should the states have all the power and the federal government's power is very limited? In a local town hall, you would have all people from both sides discussing it. There would be rigorous debates at tables and people giving speeches on their position that everyone would hear. This allows everyone who's involved in the town hall to hear both perspectives, making everyone involved act like detectives. Same thing with elections when it's trying to get the perspectives of thousands of people on who should be the next mayor, governor, senator, president, etc. Now, you can think of social media forces everyone to do the complete opposite. Now, we all have things that we're interested in, such as bodybuilding, veganism, anime, politics, etc. Say that I lean a certain way and have a slight interest in politics. The people that I go follow are people that are related to the things that I'm interested in. Since I follow these various accounts, they'll continually share content that regularly pops up on my newsfeed. Because this is the only type of content I'm exposed to, I might watch, like, share, or comment on it. In return, the algorithm shows me even more of that same type of content. Now, the guy with the opposite interest, he goes and does the exact same thing. Now, the producers of content must continually share content that supports the interest their audience signed up for. If they change interest or go against interest, they risk losing their audience. So when an event happens, the accounts on one side and the other side will see the exact same event, but will use it to reinforce their audience interest, leading to the two people to have completely different news feeds all the time about the exact same event. Now, instead of acting like a detective and exploring the perspectives of both interests, it just reinforces what I'm already interested in. And when it comes to events, since the accounts are cherry picking information to support those interests, you end up continuously receiving only part of the truth about the event. This is like taking all of our previous examples and only focusing on one of those perspectives. So to answer the original question about Twitter, it's the parallel opposite of what you would have gotten in a town hall. Now I want to talk a little bit more about the algorithm's goals. What is it actually trying to optimize for over time? Now we have talked about the algorithm recommending things that you have an interest in, so we can add interest. These social networks have an advertising business model where the more time that you spend on the app means more ads that I can show you equals more money for these companies. So it's trying to optimize a person to view their own interest for as long as possible. Now you can say that humans are wired to notice and respond to extreme or negative things even when the surrounding environment is normal. The same thing works with YouTube videos, IG posts, tweets, etc. The content that has the most emotional reaction catches our attention the most even when everything else is normal. The creators must make the most emotional reactive content in order so they can remain competitive with the algorithm, which of course is in support of their interests or they lose their audience. The algorithm is unintentionally optimizing for the most outrageous content shown for as long as possible that relates to a person's political interest, which will be reflected in the news feeds of these two populations. Now we can take a bunch of hot topics and see how this plays out in real time. Take for instance Doge and Mr. Elon Musk. For the guy who's more left-wing, his YouTube feed on a day-to-day basis are videos like Elon Musk offers zero proof of Doge's chaotic federal fraud, Musk's terrifying role in administration, his deranged town hall, heartbreaking impacts he's having on real people, what Musk is doing is illegal, how he continually gets humiliated, and so forth and so on. The guy who's right-leaning, his YouTube feed will show videos of Elon Musk makes press go quiet with chilling evidence of fraud, why Doge is key to destroying big government, Elon and Doge are exposing staggering things, how he's destroying the bureaucracy with 6 words, how Elon Musk outsmarted the establishment, how he's uncovering shocking waste of US tax dollars. Completely different stuff just pops up on each guy's YouTube homepage. Let's look at another hot topic. This time, let's look at tariffs. On Twitter, the guy on the left, he sees memes with him and other countries. A tariff is a tax that a company pays, then it passes on to you, so he's raising your taxes by 25%. When they did this in the 1930s, they lost the House and Senate for 50 years. How much some people hate the tariffs. Even though someone voted for him, he didn't think he was foolish enough to actually go through with the tariffs. They were a dumb policy 100 years ago, and they're dumb today. Memes about him with penguins, etc. The guy on the right scrolling Twitter, he sees the president's use of tariffs will be studied 500 years from now. Europe has a 10% tariff. We have a 2.5% tariff. That doesn't seem fair. Thank you, Mr. President. Clips of the other party speaking on tariffs from 1996. 13 years ago, he said the same thing. His consistency is incredible. Pictures showing how he will win the trade war. Why tariffs are a good thing because no administration has ever dealt with the problem. And if tariffs didn't work, why are other countries tariffing America? Completely different news feeds. Now, the same thing happens on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and any other social platform you can think of. Now, I'm only using 2 issues, but you can abstract that dynamic and apply this amongst every single political issue you can think about. both sides will have different news feeds about every single political topic. What's interesting is that if this was the only information that you was exposed to on a day-to-day basis, you can start to understand how someone can come to the position that they're at. This entire dynamic equals more polarization for the entire population. This is why in the past 20 years, we see that the left moves further to the left and the right moves further to the right. Now, I want to talk about politicians for a second. If you are a politician and you want to get elected, there are two major things that you would want to do. One, you need to advertise. You would need to raise money from lobbyists, then use that money to advertise on a platform that has the greatest speed and convenience for users. The current one right now is the phone with social media, so the politician then adopts it to advertise and get their message across. Since they must play by the rules of that algorithm and create highly emotional reactive content in support of their campaign, this in turn makes the politicians slightly more polarizing. Two, they need to appeal to voter issues. Since these news feeds have polarized the entire population, to get elected, the politicians must appeal more towards the polarizing news feeds, since this is where the population is getting all their news about politics from. This in turn makes the politician even more polarized. If you add these two things up, this allows increasingly polarizing politicians to get elected. Since they mostly campaign on news feeds that have no agreement on anything, when one person tries to enter something like the Paris Accord Agreement, it then gets reversed, then it gets passed again, and then it gets reversed again. When one person decides that America doesn't want to build something like the Keystone XL pipeline, another person goes back on it and starts the construction. Then someone else stops the construction, and later the construction starts up again. You abstract that dynamic and think of every single political issue you care about has this same sort of dynamic at play. You get bills that become harder to pass, the filibuster being used more than ever, and basically the entire government can't coordinate as well. This is one reason why the New York train station and education system looks the exact same way it did from 50 years ago, or why China can build 150 nuclear power plants and high-speed railroads while the United States can't even build one. If you watched my earlier video on why things don't get better in the United States, then you get where I'm talking about. Now, if you really listen to this analysis, you can conclude that social media breaks democracies over time. Now, it wasn't always like this. When the polarization was low, you can get coordination that is very high. Politicians could agree on things, which made Congress operate more efficiently, leading to government able to make progress on things year upon year. The US used to be able to build the atomic bomb, build the entire interstate, sign bills that completely reshape the education system, go to the moon, etc., which obviously we don't see United States doing things like this today. Now, China and Russia knows this, so they decide to ban all the social media sites in their countries. Then they create millions of social media bots aimed at the United States. Those bots then make fake accounts that either boost engagement on divisive content, or they create their own divisive content. This in return breaks the United States even faster. Now, the final question that you might be thinking of is, what are some things that we can do to at least push this in the right direction? The first thing I would say is to seek out perspectives that are different from your own. You should approach every tribal or polarizing issue like a detective. For example, if you're asking the question, what is the best form of government? Study every major type and seek out the best thinkers who support each one. Do the same for questions like, what type of economy works best, highly debated social issues, or even complex topics like why war is happening or whether it's justified. By actively seeking out different perspectives and analyzing them like a detective, you can gain a much deeper and more balanced understanding than if you only focused on one viewpoint. Sort of like the elephant example we used in the beginning. Even if you think that a perspective is mostly wrong, it's still valuable to understand why others find it compelling. One way I do this is by using a service called Ground News. With Ground News, it takes thousands of news articles, organizes them by topic and political spectrum, and puts them on a site to read. This allows us to do our detective work for any given topic. For example, we can click on something like government shutdown, we can scroll down to one of the news articles, and then if we scroll down, we can see all what the left is saying, we can see what the center is saying, and we can also see what the right is saying. And if you wanted to, you could click on read full article and then it will take you directly to the site. They also have a blind spot feed where you can see all the different stories that the right is covering but not the left, and the left is covering and not the right. They also have more features like customizing your own feed, show stats of how much of one side that you consume, etc. Now, if you think the Ground News is something useful to you, click the link in the description or scan the QR code where you can get 40% off the Vantage plan. Now back to the video. The second thing I will recommend is this. Because algorithms tend to recommend you things you're already interested in, you can intentionally subscribe to and follow people you disagree with. This way, you'll start seeing the strongest arguments both for and against various issues. You can do this on your main account, or you can create separate accounts specifically for this purpose. That's what I did while I was making this video. I created both left-leaning and right-leaning accounts on each platform, 2 accounts on YouTube, 2 on Twitter, and 2 on TikTok. Then I followed a variety of people on each side. As a result, the algorithm started recommending me the strongest arguments from both sides. Thirdly, we see that many social networks have been created, but they're either 10% better or simply replicas of the original. This is nowhere near good enough to outcompete the major giants. Now, if you're trying to eliminate or at least make all the current social media sites significantly less relevant, you will first need to build something entirely new that offers a faster or more convenient form of communication than the phone, then build a new service on top of that. Maybe a VR headset or a Neuralink, and then build something on top of them. Since you're building something new, you can experiment with other things that are not advertising business models, and maybe even making it open source, etc. The media, artists, businesses, and others would follow the new platform, effectively making the phone and or social media less relevant, like what happened with the TV. That's all for now. If you like this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. If you enjoy my work and want to support me so I can continually create content, consider donating on PayPal or subscribing to my Patreon. On my Patreon, I show the Figma file used to make all the infographics, I share the 3,000 word script, and I create a Q&A video answering many comments and questions about this video. That's pretty much it. Thank you so much, and y'all have a good one. Happy Tuesday.